The ground-penetrating radar pinged at 14 feet of depth on a Tuesday morning in late October, and I felt something cold turn over in my chest. I was standing in the middle of my Christmas tree field with a surveyor named Carl Nystrom, who had been hired to map a new irrigation expansion across my family's coastal bluff. He looked at the display. He looked at me. He said, very quietly, "Holt, that's a 14-inch sewer trunk, active, running north-south, right under your trees." Behind me, on the high ground above my ranch, the 70 luxury homes of Bluffview Estates glittered against the gray Oregon sky. I knelt down in the wet soil between 2 rows of noble fir my mother had planted in 1991 with my late brother. I put one hand on the cold ground. She didn't know yet. She didn't know I had spent 28 years as the Lincoln County Public Works Director. She didn't know I had given her HOA 30 days written notice that, if they did not cure the trespass, I would, on day 31, lawfully cut their main sewer line at the property line. What would you do if your HOA secretly buried a live sewer trunk under your family land? Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. My name's Holt Calloway. I'm 54 years old. I retired in February as the Lincoln County, Oregon Public Works Director after 28 years. And the family land I came home to that October morning was a place my grandfather had cleared with a draft horse and a steel scoop in 1939. The grandfather was Otis Calloway. He had come west out of Iowa in 1932, ridden the rails through the Depression, and in 1939 bought 240 acres of coastal bluff between Newport and the Pacific Ocean for $1,100 and a promise to pay the rest in butter. He ran a small dairy on it from 1939 until 1972. He paid the rest in butter, on schedule, every Friday morning for 9 years. My grandmother Hazel ran the dairy after my grandfather had a heart attack in 1962. She kept it going until 1972. She closed the dairy. She kept the land. She passed it to my mother Vivian in 1989. My mother passed it to me in 2014. The land is 35 acres of noble fir Christmas trees, 90 acres of pasture, 60 acres of native bluff prairie running down to the high tide line, and 55 acres of mixed coastal spruce woods on the north end. The Pacific Ocean is visible from every window of the main house. The wind comes off the water at 30 knots most afternoons. The salt has, in 86 years, eaten roughly 6 inches off every iron post my family ever drove. My wife Pearl is 51. She is a baker. She runs a small farm-to-table bakery on Highway 101 called Hazel's, named after my grandmother. She gets up at 3:30 a.m. 4 mornings a week to make the bread. She smells, by 9 a.m., like rosemary and brown butter and the very specific kind of yeast she has been culturing in our pantry since the year we got married. We have 2 daughters. Rowan is 16. She is on the Newport High School cross-country team and is, against my advice, planning to major in marine biology. Wren is 12. She is, against everyone's advice, planning to be a stand-up comedian. She is currently working on her first 30-minute set. My brother Daniel died on this land in 1985. He was 12. I was 14. We had been hiking the North Ridge Trail above the spruce woods on a clear October Saturday afternoon. He slipped on a wet stretch of basalt near the cliff edge. I was 30 feet behind him. I could not reach him in time. There is a small stone cairn at the spot where he went over. My mother and I walk to it on his birthday every year and on the anniversary of his death every year. I have not, in 40 years, missed either date. My father, Walt Calloway, was the principal of Newport High School for 28 years. He died in 2019 of a stroke at his desk during a Tuesday morning faculty meeting. My mother Vivian, who is 79, lives in a small cottage 30 feet behind the main house. She helps Pearl at the bakery on Saturdays and runs the Christmas tree farm office every December. That is the household. The president of the Bluffview Estates Homeowners Association for the last 6 years has been a woman named Whitney Aldridge, mid-50s, white, blonde, well-fed, dressed in the expensive coastal casual uniform of expensive coastal women. Her husband, Cooper Aldridge, owns Aldridge Coastal Development, the firm that built and sold Bluffview Estates between 2017 and 2020. The HOA represents 70 luxury ocean view homes, average sale price $2.5 million, perched on the bluff directly uphill from my family's 240 acres. For 4 years, the Aldridges had been quietly courting my mother to sell them a 60-acre view easement along the bluff. My mother had declined 4 times. Whitney had brought her a holiday gift basket each Christmas, and a handwritten note that always opened with the words, "Dear Vivian, perhaps this is the year." My mother had thrown each note in the wood stove and kept the gift basket for the bakery. On a Tuesday morning in late October, Carl Nystrom and I discovered that the Aldridges had, in 2019, illegally tunneled a 14-inch active sewer trunk line 1.3 miles across my land at 14 feet of depth. They had been pumping 70 houses worth of wastewater under my brother's trail for 5.5 years. Carl and I spent the next 2 hours walking the entire 1.3 miles of buried sewer line with his GPR cart. The pipe ran in a straight diagonal from the southwest corner of the Bluffview Estates property line, under my upper Christmas tree field, under the gravel access road, under the North Ridge Trail where my brother had died in 1985, under 60 yards of native bluff prairie, and out the north edge of my property line into the public right-of-way along the access road to the Newport wastewater treatment plant. Carl mapped every inch. He photographed every reading. He set GPS coordinates at 4-meter intervals. He gave me a printed report, a digital file, and a notarized affidavit of his findings before he left at 4 in the afternoon. He said, "Holt, someone wanted this very much hidden. I would be very angry if I were you." I was. I did not say so. I shook his hand. I paid him. I sat on my back porch with my mother that afternoon. She brought me a cup of coffee and a slice of the day's bread Pearl had brought home from Hazel's. I told her what we had found. My mother is 79 years old. She has lived on this land since 1946. She listened to me for 12 minutes without interrupting. When I was done, she said, "Holt, the Aldridges have been pumping their toilets under Daniel's trail for 5 years. "Yes, Mama." She set her coffee down very carefully on the porch railing. "Holt, I want you to do exactly what your father would have done. The proper way, not the angry way." "Yes, Mama." "And then, when the proper way is done and the consequences are real, I would like you to take me to the spot where the pipe crosses the trail. I would like to stand on it for a little while." I did not answer. I did not need to. I called my old attorney, Pippa Rasmussen, in Portland at 5:30 p.m. Pippa had been the lead environmental attorney for the Oregon Department of Justice for 15 years before going private. She had handled 3 water rights cases for Lincoln County during my tenure. She listened to me for 8 minutes. "Holt, email me the survey, the GPR data, and Carl's affidavit. I'll have a preliminary opinion to you by 9 a.m. tomorrow." She called me back at 8:14 p.m. She had not waited until morning. "Holt, there is no recorded easement on your property in the Lincoln County records." I checked. The Aldridge Coastal Development plat from 2019 shows the sewer trunk running along Highway 101 right-of-way to the wastewater plant. That route would have required ODOT engineering review and an estimated $4 million permit. The trunk, as you found it, is not on the recorded plat. It is on your land. It is a trespass. It is also, if the Aldridges knew about it, criminal mischief under Oregon Revised Statutes, Chapter 164, and a Federal Clean Water Act violation for unauthorized wastewater conveyance. Pippa, if I give the HOA proper written notice and they fail to cure, can I lawfully sever the line at my property boundary? She was quiet a beat. Holt, yes. Under Oregon Revised Statutes Chapter 105, you can remove an unauthorized encroachment from your land after 30 days of proper notice. For an active sewer line, you would need to coordinate with Oregon DEQ for an emergency interruption permit. You would need to notify the affected homeowners in advance, and you would need a contingency plan for sanitation during the interruption. But yes, you can lawfully cut the line. Pippa, I want to do exactly that. She was quiet a longer beat. Holt, are you sure? Pippa, They pumped 70 houses worth of sewage under the trail my brother died on. Without asking. For 5.5 years, I am sure. Then let's do this properly. I will draft the 30-day notice tonight. I hung up. I went inside. I sat at the kitchen island with Pearl. I told her in plain English what we had found and what I was going to do. Pearl listened. When I was done, she said, "Holt, do it, and do it properly. And Holt, I love you very much. Whitney Aldridge picked the wrong family." The 30-day notice was hand-delivered to Whitney Aldridge at her front door at 9:14 a.m. Wednesday morning by a Lincoln County process server I had known for 15 years. He told me on the phone afterward that Whitney had opened the envelope on her porch, read 3 lines, gone pale, and then closed the door without speaking. By Wednesday at 2 p.m., she had filed a preemptive lawsuit in Lincoln County Circuit Court, alleging that my notice was frivolous, harassing, and based on a misreading of mutually understood community easement rights, and seeking an emergency injunction to prevent any interference with critical sewer infrastructure. She had also, by Thursday morning, organized what she was calling a Bluffview Estates Community Watch. Friday morning at 4:30 a.m., someone drove a pickup truck across the southwest corner of my upper Christmas tree field, snapping the tops off approximately 140 noble fir seedlings my mother and I had planted in March. Tire tracks. No identification. Sheriff Bo Yardley came out, photographed everything, and shook his head. He had been Lincoln County Sheriff for 19 years. He had known my father. Saturday morning at 6:15 a.m., someone smashed the driver's side window of Pearl's bakery delivery van, parked behind Hazel's on Bay Street. Nothing was stolen. The dashboard had been deliberately scratched with the words, "Settle quietly," in 3-inch letters. Sheriff Yardley came out again. He said, "Holt, I would like very much to know who is doing this. I will be putting a deputy on overnight rotation past your property and past the bakery for the next 2 weeks. For what it's worth, Whitney Aldridge bought a parking ticket fixed for her son in 2019 from one of my deputies. I fired the deputy. She has not forgiven me. I am personally inclined to take an interest in this." I appreciated that. By Monday morning, the Lincoln County Department of Health had received an anonymous tip claiming Hazel's Bakery had rodent infestation, unwashed produce, and uncertified flour sources. A surprise inspection was scheduled for Tuesday afternoon. Pearl handled the inspection. The inspector, a thoughtful woman named Marley Chen, walked through the kitchen for 40 minutes. She found nothing. She told Pearl, on her way out, "Mrs. Calloway, I have a strong suspicion of who called this in. I want you to know that this office is aware." Pearl came home that evening and sat at the kitchen island and laughed for about 4 minutes straight. It was not a happy laugh. When she was done, she said, "Holt, I want this woman gone." She will be, Pearl. 30 days. 26 left. By Wednesday afternoon, Pippa Rasmussen had filed our countersuit. The countersuit named Whitney Aldridge, Cooper Aldridge, Aldridge Coastal Development LLC, and the Bluffview Estates Homeowners Association as defendants. It alleged trespass, criminal mischief, conversion, intentional infliction of emotional distress, tortious interference with my wife's business, defamation per se for the bakery report, vandalism, and violation of Oregon's anti-SLAPP statute. Damages sought, $2.8 million. She also filed simultaneously a formal referral to the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality regarding the unpermitted wastewater conveyance. By Friday afternoon, DEQ had assigned a senior investigator named Innes Holberg to the case. Innes drove down from Salem Monday morning. She walked the GPR survey path with Carl Nystrom and me. She took her own readings. She photographed everything. She said, very quietly, "Mr. Calloway, the department's preliminary view is that this is an unpermitted municipal-grade conveyance of Class C wastewater across a non-easement private parcel for a period of approximately 5.5 years. We are opening a formal enforcement file today. I will also be making a referral to the EPA's Region 10 Criminal Enforcement Division." She shook my hand. She drove back to Salem. 23 days left. That night, I sat on the porch and walked through the timeline in my head. The pipe had been installed in late summer 2018. The HOA had begun selling homes in early 2019. The Aldridges had collected, by Pippa's first rough estimate from the DEQ subpoena response, approximately $400,000 per year in sewer infrastructure allocated dues from the 70 households, totaling roughly $2.2 million over 5.5 years for sewer service that was, legally speaking, not theirs to provide. Cooper's development company had also, separately, claimed the unauthorized line as a depreciable infrastructure asset on his federal tax returns, generating roughly $300,000 in improper deductions. The numbers were not small. The numbers were also, in the slow, patient way that paperwork works, no longer hidden. I went inside. Pearl was already asleep. Rowan was up, reading a marine biology textbook by lamplight. She looked up. She said, "Dad, you doing okay?" I said, "I'm okay, sweetheart. Long day." She said, "Dad, whatever you're about to do, we're with you." I had not, until that moment, told her anything specific about what I was about to do. She had figured it out on her own. I kissed her on the top of her head and went to bed. The bribe came on day 15. Cooper Aldridge drove up to Hazel's Bakery at 11:30 a.m. on a Thursday in a Navy Range Rover with personalized plates that read Bluff VU. He was wearing a quarter-zip Patagonia fleece and carrying a leather portfolio. He came inside. He ordered a black coffee and a cardamom bun. He sat at the small table by the window. He waited until Pearl had a break in customers. He asked if she could spare 10 minutes. Pearl, who is 6 inches shorter than Cooper Aldridge and approximately 100% more dangerous, sat down across from him. He opened the portfolio. He slid out a single sheet of cream-colored letterhead. He laid it on the table between them. The letter was a 1-year consulting agreement for Hazel's to serve as the preferred culinary partner for Aldridge Coastal Development's 3 planned upcoming Ocean View projects. The agreement guaranteed Pearl $48,000 per year, plus a one-time signing bonus of $15,000. The signing bonus check was clipped to the back of the letter. Cooper Aldridge said, smiling, "Pearl, I think you'll agree that our 2 families are stronger as partners than as adversaries." Pearl picked up the letter. She read it twice. She picked up the signing bonus check. She read the amount. She set both back on the table. "Cooper, my husband warned you, in writing, that you have until the 13th of next month to remove your pipe. You have, instead, vandalized our Christmas tree field, our delivery van, and reported my bakery to the health inspector. You have now come into my place of business at lunchtime and offered me a bribe. I want you to leave." "Pearl, I'd hardly call this..." "Cooper, I want you to leave." He stood up. He took the portfolio. He left the check on the table. Pearl photographed the check, the letter, and his half-finished cardamom bun. She emailed everything to Pippa Rasmussen. She wrapped the bun in wax paper and put it in her purse as evidence. By Friday afternoon, Pippa had added attempted bribery and tortious interference with a non-party spouse to the counterclaim. By Wednesday, Cooper Aldridge's Portland law firm had withdrawn as counsel. On day 18, Whitney Aldridge held a community emergency meeting at the Bluffview Estates clubhouse. 63 of the 70 homeowners attended. She informed them that a hostile neighbor with a personal grudge is attempting to deprive your families of essential sewer service for purely vindictive reasons. She presented a voluntary special assessment of $9,000 per household, totaling $630,000, to fund emergency legal defense and infrastructure protection. 22 of the 63 homeowners walked out before the vote. The vote passed 38-3 with 22 abstentions. By Tuesday morning, 14 homeowners had emailed me asking quietly what had actually happened. Pippa sent each of them a polite 3-paragraph factual summary, citing the DEQ enforcement file number. By Friday of week 3, 9 of the 70 Bluffview homeowners had hired their own attorneys to sue the Aldridges personally for misrepresentation at the time of sale. One of those homeowners, a retired Coast Guard captain on Lot 23 named Olson Brackett, drove down to my ranch on the Saturday of week 3 at 10 a.m. He brought a six-pack of local IPA and a handwritten letter from his wife thanking my mother for the Christmas trees she had personally selected and delivered to their porch for the past 4 years at no charge. Captain Brackett sat on my porch for an hour. He did not ask many questions. He drank one beer. He said, before he left, "Holt, you're doing the right thing. About 30 of us up there know it. About 15 will say so when the moment comes. The other 25 are still hoping this goes away. They'll come around." He shook my hand. He drove back up the bluff in his pickup truck. He left the rest of the six-pack on the porch swing. I put it in the kitchen refrigerator. I drank one beer that night. I saved the other 4 for after the cut. On day 22, a private investigator parked a silver sedan at the foot of my driveway at 6:30 a.m. He stayed for 90 minutes. He took photographs. He came back the next morning, and the next. On the 4th morning, I walked down the driveway with 2 cups of coffee. I tapped on his window. I handed him a coffee. "Marvin, I thought that was you." Marvin Boatwright had been a Lincoln County Public Works inspector under me from 2003 to 2011, before he retired into a small, private security business. He took the coffee. He looked at me a long moment. "Holt, I had no idea. The company didn't tell me who I was surveilling. I'm going to go ahead and resign this contract this morning." He did. He also, by Friday, signed a sworn statement for PIPA identifying who had hired him. 6 days left. My mother, Vivian Calloway, who is 79 years old and who has lived on this land since 1946, sat me down at her cottage kitchen table on the evening of day 24 with a manila folder that had been sitting in her cedar chest under her bed for 33 years. "Holt, your Uncle Bart kept a record. I should have remembered sooner. I am sorry." My Uncle Bart, my mother's older brother, had run the Calloway family land from 1972 until his death in 1996. He had been, my mother said, the kind of man who wrote everything down. The folder contained 2 documents. The first was a 1957 USDA aerial soil survey of the Calloway parcel, taken from an Army Air Corps reconnaissance flight at 1,500 feet. The survey showed the family land in clean black and white, with every boundary, every barn, every dirt track. It also showed, with the clarity that only black and white film achieves, the North Ridge Trail where my brother died in 1985, running clean across virgin native prairie that no pipe could possibly have been buried under at the time. The second was a 2018 letter from a Newport surveyor named Glenn Carter, addressed to my Uncle Bart's estate executor. The letter described unusual subsurface disturbance along the north property line, consistent with mini-tunneling activity, and recommended further investigation. The letter was dated September 4, 2018. My uncle had been dead for 22 years by then. The letter had been sent, in error, to my uncle's old address, forwarded by the Newport post office to my mother, who had put it in the cedar chest with the 1957 aerial survey, and had, with the gentle absent-mindedness of a recently widowed 73-year-old, forgotten about it. The 2018 letter, cross-referenced against the date of Aldridge Coastal Development's sewer construction phase, confirmed that the illegal trunk line had been installed during August and September of 2018, exactly when the surveyor had observed the suspicious tunneling activity. The Aldridges had used horizontal directional drilling that minimized surface evidence, with night work and a small crew. It had worked, mostly. Glenn Carter, an experienced coastal surveyor doing a routine boundary check for an adjacent property in September 2018, had been the one person on Earth who had noticed. My mother handed me the folder across her kitchen table. "Holt, take this to Pippa tomorrow. I am sorry I did not give it to you 12 years ago." I took the folder. I held it. I looked at my mother across the small kitchen of the cottage where she had moved in 2019 after my father died. "Mama, you did not know." "I know I did not know. I am still sorry." We sat there a moment. The October light came through her kitchen window, slanting low across the floor in the way it does on the Oregon coast at that time of year. Holt, are you going to do this thing on day 30? I am, Mama. Then I want to stand on the trail with you that morning, before you cut the line. Yes, Mama. She nodded once. She poured me a small finger of bourbon from the bottle she kept on top of her refrigerator. I did the same for her. We drank in silence. Then she said, very quietly, Daniel would have laughed. He would have helped you carry the saw. I closed my eyes. Now go home to your wife. You have 6 days of work to do, and I want you sleeping. I went home. I emailed the folder to Pippa Rasmussen at 9:47 p.m. She emailed me back at 10:02 p.m. with one line. She wrote, Holt, this is the kill shot. Sleep well. I did. I will not, in the interest of your time, walk you through every detail of the next 6 days. I will tell you they involved Pippa calling Oregon DEQ, EPA Region 10, the Lincoln County Sheriff, the Oregon State Bar, 2 state senators, and a U.S. Attorney's Office investigator from Portland. They involved Carl Nystrom doing a second GPR survey to triple confirm every dimension of the buried pipe. They involved a coastal engineering firm in Newport drafting a complete contingency sanitation plan that included 30 portable toilet units, 4 sewer hauling trucks on standby, and a temporary holding tank to be installed at the head of the Aldridge's development driveway. The contingency plan would maintain full sanitary service for all 70 homes for the duration of any interruption. It was paid for entirely by Aldridge Coastal Development's bonded performance reserves, which I had every legal right to draw against under Oregon ORS 105. They involved Pearl baking in her quiet, patient way, 18 large, flat loaves of rosemary focaccia for the work crew that would be on site the morning of the cut. She did not ask me to bake them. She did not say anything about it. She just baked them. They involved my daughter Rowan, 16 years old, sitting at our kitchen table on a Tuesday evening and saying, very quietly, Dad, can I be there when it happens? I want to see. Rowan, sweetheart, it's going to be on a Saturday morning. There will be press. Are you sure? I'm sure. Mom said I could choose. I'm choosing. Then you'll be there. They involved my daughter Wren, 12 years old, asking me 3 nights in a row if she could write a stand-up bit about the situation. I said yes, on the condition that she workshop it with her grandmother first. She did. They involved Sheriff Bo Yardley personally coordinating with 3 deputies to ensure crowd control on the morning of the cut. They involved KGW Channel 8 from Portland, KOIN Channel 6 from Portland, and the local Newport News-Times sending camera crews. They involved a Pulitzer-winning environmental reporter from the Oregonian, a man named Asher Lindquist, asking if he could ride along with the work crew. I said yes. They involved my mother Vivian washing and ironing her late husband's denim jacket, and asking me to bring it to her cottage Friday night so she would be appropriately dressed for Saturday morning. They involved, on Friday afternoon at 4:14 p.m., Whitney Aldridge calling my landline for the first time in 29 days. I answered. She did not say hello. She said in the voice of a woman who had spent 29 days losing weight she could not afford to lose, Holt, please, I will agree to anything. We can sign over the easement for $1. We can pay for relocation. We can do whatever you want. Just don't cut the line tomorrow, I said in the calmest voice I owned. Whitney, you had 30 days to negotiate properly through counsel. You spent them filing a frivolous suit, vandalizing my Christmas trees, intimidating my wife, bribing my wife, and surveilling my home. The cut is tomorrow at noon. There's now nothing to negotiate. Holt, please. Whitney, the contingency plan will maintain your sewer service. Your homeowners will not, in any practical sense, notice an interruption beyond a brief inconvenience. You will receive a federal indictment within 90 days. I would strongly advise you in the meantime to retain a criminal defense attorney. I hung up. Pearl, at the kitchen island, drinking tea, said, Holt, was that her? That was her. And It is happening tomorrow. She nodded. She got up. She kissed me on the forehead. I'm going to bed. I have 18 focaccias to deliver at 6 in the morning. I sat at the kitchen island a long time. The October moon was full over the Pacific. I went upstairs. I slept. Saturday morning arrived earlier than morning was supposed to. I was up at 4. Pearl was up at 3 to bake the focaccias. By 5, the kitchen smelled like rosemary and warm flour, and the strong black coffee my mother had taught us both to make. By 5:30, my mother was in the kitchen in my father's denim jacket and a pair of pressed Wranglers, drinking coffee with both hands. The doorbell rang at 5:14 a.m. It was a Lincoln County deputy in uniform, holding a manila envelope. He apologized as he handed it to me. Sorry, Mr. Calloway. Just got served by an attorney on call. Emergency motion. Whitney Aldridge and the Bluffview Estates HOA had sometime between 11 p.m. Friday and 4 a.m. Saturday retained an emergency motion attorney out of Salem and filed an ex parte petition for a temporary restraining order to prevent the cut. The hearing was scheduled telephonically for 6:30 a.m. with the on-call duty judge, Lincoln County Superior Court Judge Theodora Krantz. I called Pippa at 5:18. Pippa was already awake. Pippa was always already awake. Holt, send me the petition. I will be on the call at 6:30. Do not, under any circumstances, do anything other than make breakfast. I made pancakes. Wren came down at 6 in her pajamas and watched me make them. Dad, is the lady still trying? She is, baby. Will she stop? She will, baby. Today. At 6:42 a.m., Pippa called back. Her voice had the calm, steady note of an attorney who had just won. Holt. Judge Krantz denied the petition. She found that the Aldridges had not made a prima facie showing of a legally cognizable easement, that they had received proper 30-day notice under ORS 105, that the contingency sanitation plan was adequate, and that the underlying conduct of the petitioners over the past 4 weeks raised, in her words, quote, substantial questions about the petitioners' good faith and clean hands, end quote. The cut proceeds at noon as planned. Pippa, thank you. Holt, eat your pancakes. I'm driving down. I'll be there by 10. By 9 a.m. the work crew had arrived. 6 men in coveralls from Coastal Excavation, a Newport contractor I had hired through the regular bid process. They had a mini excavator, 2 pickup trucks, and a 40-foot dump trailer. The crew foreman was a man named Trent Halliday, who had worked under me at Lincoln County Public Works for 11 years before going private. He shook my hand. He did not say anything sentimental. He just got to work. By 9:30, Inez Holberg from Oregon DEQ had arrived with 2 assistants and a portable mobile inspection lab. By 9:45, Special Agent Quinn Larkin from EPA Region 10 Criminal Enforcement had arrived from Seattle, plain clothes, with a single satchel. By 10, the news crews were arriving. KGW, KOIN, the Newport News-Times, Asher Lindquist from the Oregonian, and a regional NPR reporter who had heard about the story on Twitter at 7 a.m. and had driven up from Eugene. By 10:30, my daughter Rowan arrived from her morning run, in her cross-country sweatshirt, having decided she wanted to see the cut from the trail itself rather than from the work area. She walked up the North Ridge with my mother, both carrying small flowers Rowan had picked from the cottage garden, to lay at the small stone cairn for my brother before the cut started. By 11, the 70 Bluffview Estates homeowners had been advised, by certified email from Pippa's office at 6 a.m., that sanitation interruption would begin at noon, and that 30 portable toilet units were being delivered. The Olson sanitation trucks were already, at 11:15, rolling slowly up Bluffview Drive. At 11:42 a.m., Whitney Aldridge's white Range Rover came over the gravel rise at the foot of my driveway at 35 miles an hour, kicking dust, and skidded to a stop 10 feet short of the work area. She got out. She was in cream linen pants, a quilted vest, her best pearl earrings, and the kind of face that said she had been awake for 36 hours. Cooper Aldridge got out of the passenger side, slower, in a navy quarter zip, looking like a man who had been told by his criminal defense attorney to stay in the car and had ignored the advice. Whitney walked, almost ran, to the cut location. She stopped 12 feet from where Trent Halliday's crew had laid out the orange spray paint on the grass marking the planned trench. She stood in the spray paint. She turned to face me. Her chin trembled. The cameras swung. She said, in a voice loud enough to carry, "Holt Calloway, if you cut this line today, you are knowingly choosing to inflict harm on 70 families. You will be sued personally. You will be sued by every individual homeowner. You will be vilified in this community for the rest of your natural life. There is still time to stop. I am begging you. Please." I had not, in the previous 29 days, said a single word to Whitney Aldridge in person. I did not raise my voice now. "Whitney, the portable sanitation trucks are already at Bluffview. The contingency plan is funded. No homeowner will lose service in any meaningful sense. The cut is happening at noon. I would like you to step out of the marked trench area, return to your vehicle, and watch from the public right-of-way." Bo Yardley stepped forward from the press group, in uniform, with his hat in his hand. "Mrs. Aldridge, I'd like you to please step back to your vehicle now." Whitney did not move. She turned and looked at Cooper. Cooper looked at the ground. She turned back to me. "Holt, I am not joking. I will block this trench with my body if I have to." A small silence held across the work area. My mother, Vivian Calloway, 79 years old, in her late husband's denim jacket and pressed Wranglers, walked forward from where she had been standing beside the press group. She crossed the orange spray paint. She stopped 2 feet in front of Whitney Aldridge. The camera swung again. My mother said, in the voice I had heard her use exactly 4 times in my life, the voice she had used the morning we found my brother's body at the foot of the bluff in October of 1985. "Mrs. Aldridge, my older grandchild walked up that trail this morning to put flowers on the cairn of her uncle, who died on that ground when he was 12 years old. Your sewer pipe runs under that cairn. Your pipe was not there when my son died. You put it there without asking. You have, for 5.5 years, run other people's waste under the stone where I lay flowers every October. You will, in 2.5 minutes, watch my son turn the saw on. Then you will go home." She did not raise her voice once. She did not need to. Whitney Aldridge looked at her. Whitney Aldridge opened her mouth. Whitney Aldridge closed it. Whitney Aldridge took 2 steps backward. She walked, in a kind of stunned silence, back to the Range Rover. Cooper followed. They sat in the Range Rover. They did not drive away. The cameras filmed them sitting in the Range Rover for the next 2.5 minutes. At 11:58 a.m., Trent Halliday handed me the cordless reciprocating saw he had brought from his truck. It was a big DeWalt, 18-volt, with an 8-inch bimetal blade. He had set up the cut at a clean access point along the property line where the trench had already been excavated to the pipe by the mini excavator. The 14-inch sewer trunk, exposed at the bottom of the trench, sat black and quietly malevolent under the gray Oregon sky. I climbed down into the trench. I looked up. Pearl was on the edge, with Wren leaning against her. Rowan was beside my mother. Pippa Rasmussen had arrived 10 minutes earlier and was standing beside Inez Holberg. Asher Lindquist was leaning over the trench taking notes. Special Agent Larkin was speaking quietly into her phone. I looked at my watch. 11:59:30. I held up the saw. The camera zoomed. At 12:00 noon Pacific Daylight Time, on the 3rd Saturday of October, I pulled the trigger. The blade bit into the pipe wall with a high, clean whine. The pipe was Schedule 40 PVC, 14 inches, with an inner liner. The first cut went clean through in 22 seconds. I moved the saw 4 inches and made a second cut. I removed a 4-inch wide section of pipe wall. I held it up over the trench. The cameras filmed it. The pipe was not, at the moment of cutting, conveying. Trent's crew had, in coordination with the Bluffview homeowners, asked all 70 households to please refrain from flushing or running water between 11:50 and 12:10. The pipe was empty. The cut was clean. The smell was, mercifully, not what it might have been. I handed the cut section to Inez Holberg. She bagged it as official DEQ evidence and labeled it. Special Agent Larkin photographed it from 3 angles. Trent's crew, working quickly, installed a sealed plumbing cap at each end of the cut and welded a flange union to allow the section to be later inspected or relocated under proper authority. The whole physical operation, from first cut to capped seal, took 11 minutes. By 12:14 p.m., the line was severed. By 12:15, the press was filing the story. By 12:30, the lead segment on KGW Channel 8's noon broadcast was a live shot from the trench with the words, "Rancher cuts unauthorized sewer line at Bluffview," running across the bottom of the screen. I climbed out of the trench. My hands were shaking slightly. Pearl handed me a focaccia. "Eat. You haven't since breakfast." I ate the focaccia. It was extraordinary. My mother stood beside me. She did not say anything. She put her arm through mine. We looked together at the trench, at the work crew finishing the seal, at the 70 houses up on the bluff above us, at the gray Oregon sky over the Pacific. She said, very quietly, "Daniel would have laughed his head off." I almost cried. I did not. Whitney and Cooper Aldridge were still in the Range Rover. They watched the cut. They watched the seal. They watched my mother and me standing on the trench edge. At 12:47 p.m., before any of the press had a chance to walk over and ask them for comment, they drove away. Bo Yardley walked over to me at 1 o'clock. He shook my hand. "Holt." That was about the most dignified thing I have ever seen done with a reciprocating saw. "Your mother was magnificent." Special Agent Larkin came over at 1:14. She shook my hand. "Mr. Calloway, the federal grand jury process will begin Monday morning. I have been doing this work for 19 years. I have never seen a private property owner execute a remedy this cleanly. The Aldridges are not going to enjoy what comes next." By 3, the press had cleared. By 3:30, Pippa and I were sitting on my porch with my mother and Pearl, drinking iced tea, watching the late afternoon light come off the Pacific. Pippa said, "Holt, by Tuesday, we will file a motion for partial summary judgment on the trespass and damages claims. Given the documented evidence and the federal investigation, I anticipate the Aldridges will move towards settlement within 90 days. Restitution should be in the $2.5 to $3 million range." I nodded. She said, "Also, you should know, the Lincoln County Bar Association, the Oregon Environmental Council, and the Oregon Cattlemen's Association have, in the last 3 hours, each separately reached out to me asking how they can publicly express support." I almost laughed. I did not. I said, "Pippa, just tell them I appreciate it. We have work to do." She smiled. She drank her iced tea. At sundown, my mother walked back to her cottage. Pearl went to the kitchen to start dinner. I sat on the porch alone and watched the sky go orange, then pink, then the deep, particular gray that the Oregon coast does at sunset. Rowan came down from the trail. She sat beside me on the porch swing. She did not say anything. She leaned against my shoulder. We watched the sky go dark together. I thought about my brother. I thought about my father. I thought about how in the morning the Aldridges would still be the Aldridges, but the pipe would not still be the pipe. And that was a thing I could live with. 8 months later, on a warm afternoon in late June, I stood on the Northridge Trail with my mother and watched my younger daughter Wren perform her completed 30-minute stand-up set for an audience of 43 Lincoln County neighbors, 2 state senators, and 1 Pulitzer-winning environmental reporter who had asked 3 months earlier if he could come back for the celebration. Wren was 12. She killed. Cooper and Whitney Aldridge were indicted on federal Clean Water Act violations, federal mail-in wire fraud, criminal trespass, and Oregon state corporate fraud in January. They accepted plea deals in May. 5 years federal custody for Cooper, 3 for Whitney, full restitution of just under $3 million to me and my family, $212,000 to Pearl personally for tortious interference with her bakery, full restoration of all damaged Christmas trees, permanent ban from Oregon real estate development and HOA service, and a separate $1.6 million fine to Aldridge Coastal Development LLC, paid to the Oregon DEQ. The 70 Bluffview Estates homeowners reorganized, under court-appointed receivership, into a new homeowners cooperative called the Bluffview Coastal Association. The new bylaws are 12 pages, plain English. Dues dropped 31%. The new president is a retired Coast Guard captain named Olson Brackett, who lives on Lot 23 and who, it turns out, had been quietly waiting 4 years to swing that gavel. 29 of the 70 original homeowners attended a community-organized barbecue on my pasture in April to personally apologize to my family. They brought side dishes. They brought a small, hand-carved cedar plaque inscribed with the words, "Thank you for holding the line." We put the plaque on the wall of Pearl's Bakery. The sewer was rerouted at Aldridge Coastal Development's bonded expense through the original Highway 101 right-of-way the developer should have used in 2017. The new route took 6 months to install. The rerouted system has been in operation since April. My land was, in May, restored to its original surface condition along the entire 1.3-mile path of the removed pipe. Native bluff prairie was reseeded. The trench was filled and graded. Carl Nystrom returned with his GPR cart in June and confirmed that no foreign material remained on the parcel. He did not charge me for the second survey. He said it was the most satisfying piece of work he had done in 30 years, and he wanted it on the house. The Aldridge attorney from the failed Salem TRO petition was, per Judge Krantz's referral, suspended from the practice of law in Oregon for 6 months. Cooper's Portland law firm reached a confidential malpractice settlement with the 70 Bluffview homeowners in March. Marvin Boatwright, the former public works inspector who had quietly resigned the surveillance contract, was hired full-time the following month as the new investigator for the Bluffview Coastal Association under Captain Brackett. He drives the same silver sedan. He still drinks black coffee. We founded 2 things. The first is the Walt Calloway Coastal Education Fund, established at Newport High School in my father's name, the high school he had served as principal for 28 years. The fund provides $5,000 a year to a Newport High graduate going into civil engineering, environmental science, or vocational construction trades. The first recipient is a 17-year-old girl named Mira Bjornson, who is going into civil engineering. She wrote me a letter. I keep it on my desk. The second is the Daniel Calloway Coastal Trail easement. 60 acres of the family land surrounding the Northridge Trail, placed by recorded deed in August into a permanent public access conservation easement managed by the Lincoln Land Trust. The trail is now open to the public from sunrise to sunset, with a small carved wooden sign at the trailhead bearing my brother's name and the dates of his life. There is no plaque about the sewer. There does not need to be one. My mother walks the trail every Sunday morning with one of the daughters. Sometimes both. Sometimes neither, and she walks it alone with my late father's denim jacket on, against the wind off the Pacific. Pearl is still at Hazel's at 3:30 a.m., 4 mornings a week. The cardamom buns are unchanged. Cooper Aldridge's half-finished bun is still in our freezer, in a Ziploc, as a kind of small, private trophy that only Pearl and I know about. Rowan started her senior year in September and was admitted early to Oregon State University, where she will study marine biology in the fall. Wren has booked, on the strength of a viral clip from the June barbecue, 3 paid stand-up appearances in Portland for next summer. I sleep well. I did not sleep well for those 30 days. I sleep well now. Here is what I learned. Pipes do not forget who they belong to. Trails do not forget who died on them. Mothers, in the right boots and the right denim jacket, can move a $40 million HOA president out of a trench with 2 minutes of quiet truth. And a man who has spent 28 years writing the rules of his county is not, when those rules are turned against him, without recourse. If you have ever had your own HOA story, drop it in the comments. I read every one. If you'd like more stories like this, hit subscribe. Stay rooted. Stay watching. I'll see you on the next one.
That's Bluffview Estates. Winnie Audrey didn't fall because Hall shouted. She fell because his grandfather had paid for 240 coastal acres with butter in 1939. because his mother had kept a 33-year-old photo in her saddle chest, and because his brother, Daniel, had died on the trail in 1985 that nobody had any right to bury a sewer line under. Hasten and stated, and the property served 30-day notice still with and the HOA Pierre Eriks. The real win wasn't the indictment. It was Pierre's bakery getting a set of flack from the apologetic neighbors. It was Rowan running on her cross-country team. It was Ren killing her first stand-up set at a barbecue on the patio. It was an 80-year-old woman in her late husband's denim jacket, stepping forward in front of 140 cameras and saying, in her quieted voice, what needed to be said about a trail and a stone can and a 12-year-old boy. If you ever had a Whitney, drop your story in the comments. I read everyone. If this is what you need at the end of a long week, hit subscribe so the next one finds you. Next time, we head to a small Vermont ski town where a nature way tried to find a single mom out of her late father had built a frame and ran into the unpaid bill collector she didn't know she left behind. See you there.